moved in, and I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to the site and why we moved in here, and show you around. We're located at the end of a cul-de-sac, or close to the end of a cul-de-sac. It's a little over a mile long, so we don't get a lot of traffic moving by. We selected a spot way out in the country. We've lived in the city for over 30 years, and we wanted a little bit of elbow room. And we are nature enthusiasts, and we wanted to be closer to nature. The kids have moved out. We've downsized the house, and so we wanted to reestablish what we have in terms of our living conditions and how we relate to our surroundings. Especially important to us is in our selection of a location are a number of things. I have some rules that I've developed over time about what are important to me. One thing that's important to me is not having any noise. So things like not being near a highway, and so I don't have highway noise, or a railroad or an airport are important to me. So we've managed to do that, although the Lowell Airport is not far from here, and on weekends there's a little small engine club that seems to delight in taking little flights over our property, paragliders and so on, little biplanes. But we kind of enjoy that. We also wanted a little bit of acreage. We wanted to be able to plant a nice garden that we hadn't had before, and we wanted some diversity in not only the plant life but in the wildlife. So we wanted to have something that could be sustainable for us. We selected a material for the driveway which looks like gravel. It's actually crushed concrete. It's permeable, so that water will drain through it rather than have something that would shed water, although that's not a problem with this particular site. It's a very, very sandy site and will absorb any rainfall that hits it. This is about 6 inches of crushed concrete on top of a fabric, a geotextile fabric, and then it's all sand below that as far as the well drilling would go. So we're going to take a walk up the driveway, and I'm going to point out some features of the plant life that we've discovered as we've been talking to some of our experts on the site. This is a really spectacular grape ear mullein. It has a really pretty yellow flower in the fall, which this one seems to have just about met its match with the frosts. I want to point out on the other side of the driveway, we have what's called a Canada goldenrod, or a Canadian goldenrod, and it is a massive plant, and it's very aggressive. When I first started working on the lot, somebody told me that it was an invasive species. As it turns out, it's not. It is a native species, but it's very aggressive. It will take over a site, and it seems to have done a marvelous job of that on our particular site. We're going to do what we can to control it, so that we have some balance on the site in terms of the biodiversity. But it's pretty spectacular right now. It's in full bloom, so if you've got problems with goldenrod, you might want to steer clear. Behind us is a stand of autumn olive. It takes over, I would say, maybe 10% of the biomass on the site. It is pernicious. It is an invasive species, and it's on our plan to slowly eradicate it from the site. It does have a really nice berry that the birds really enjoy, so we're not in a huge hurry to get rid of it, but it really is a dominant part of the landscape here. And it also provides an awful lot of privacy for the site that we enjoy, so it'll be a long-term project. Behind me is a stand of staghorn sumac, and it's one of the features that we especially liked when we purchased the lot. This is about 15 to 20 feet high. It's a very old grove, and there's no new growth coming on here. I think that it's because there's a row of pines behind it that is blocking too much sunlight. The sumac needs an awful lot of sunlight to thrive in, And so we're seeing kind of the end of this grove lifespan. But it really, I love the way the light bounces through here. What we've noticed since we moved in here, since we actually purchased the lot, is interesting. Maybe in the evolution of this little grove is in the springtime it has a nice great big flower on it, and then in the fall, or as the flower turns into a seed head. In the first year we had seed heads, but there have been none in the last year. So we think this is probably part of the natural evolution, as this grove matures and gets to the point where it can't replicate itself. We have other areas on the site where we do have sumac where they're healthy and they do develop their seed heads. So that's our theory anyway. Before we started construction, one of the features of this site was this weed. If you can see this kind of a purple haze, I believe it's called loveweed or love grass, and it covered a lot of the site. We've disturbed a fair amount of the site immediately around the house, and it just kind of created this purple haze over the entire meadow area here, and it's really a very pretty site. This little purple flower here, which you're probably very familiar with along the roadsides. This is knapweed, and knapweed is an invasive species also, and that's something that we're going to try and discourage. We'll pick this as we go along. It comes out very easily, and we'll pull it. It's a pretty flower. It's very common. You'll have seen this, but we're going to gradually get rid of this too. It's in our plan. We estimate this land was farmland maybe 50 years ago. So the trees that we have here are 40 to 50 years old. Behind us are some black cherry trees. The first 3 trees here. So they're a great wood, and they make a really nice tree. So these first 3 50, 55-foot trees are the black cherry. We come around here and we're into some of the hardwoods. We have a number of different oaks. We have a little 40-foot white pine. The previous owners had cleared out a lot of the undergrowth here, and so we've been taking advantage of that. We really like this meadow area. At the very back of the lot that really defines the property line is what would have been part of a forestry project that we think was probably done by the WPA. It's a double row of red pines, and we think that it's possible that this was part of a Civilian Conservation Corps project at some time that was planted with the red pines, and that was harvested off of this lot, and that there's a double row of red pines along the north side of the property, and then a row along the east side of the property that remains. And they're really beautiful. They're probably 70 feet tall, and we really enjoy going through them. It's a very, very hard wood. We have, over at my right, we have the other white pine, which we especially enjoy. The shade that it provides is particularly nice, and we've set up out under there with our Sunday morning paper and a good cup of coffee a number of times to enjoy the early morning. We've got a hummingbird feeder out here, and we've had probably a couple of families of hummingbirds that zoom around the lot, so we're infested with wildlife, and we enjoy every minute of it. This is one of the things that we were really looking forward to starting when we got out here. Our last house had a very, very tiny spot. We had room for a tomato plant and a bean plant. So we put in a nice garden. Unfortunately, it has to be protected from the critters, so we had to put a fence around here. So we have woodchucks and skunks and rabbits that have been actively trying to get in. We had a pretty magnificent garden. It's mid-September, so it's died back quite a bit. We had a 40-foot long pumpkin vine, of which we got one fruit out of it, which is we're pretty pleased with. It's a pretty magnificent pumpkin. Squash till we can't eat anymore. More tomatoes than we could ever deal with. We had some sweet corn, which we enjoyed very much, and some beans also, which we've been picking and canning. So we've had a nice variety. We planted some herbs. We planted some berry bushes, which will be a year or two before we harvest anything, but we're very pleased with that. One of the things that we did for the site was we didn't want to have a lawn. And so we planted native grasses, and immediately around the house we planted a low-growing or a no-mow grass, which are a variety of 7 different fescues. And they only grow maybe 8 inches tall. You can choose to mow it. They haven't come in yet, but one of the things that we did was we installed a rainwater harvesting system, and that consists of a rubber liner and gravel all the way around the perimeter of the house, and that feeds into a cistern, a concrete cistern that's below ground behind me, underneath the greenhouse that you see behind me. And we use that to irrigate the garden with. So that's the only thing that we're irrigating. That little black thing that you see on the roof of the garden is a solar collector, and I have a little DC pump in there that we pump out of we have a 1,000-gallon storage tank below ground. It only takes a 1/4 inch rain to fill that 1,000-gallon tank, and because we had such a drought this summer, we actually emptied the tank and we had to use well water to keep the garden going. But we've been very pleased with that whole setup.